Okay, Congress is back from their Memorial Day recess, and topping the Democrats' to-do list this week is the January 6 mini-series that starts Thursday night in prime time and gun control legislation.
As we begin another work period, the American people have one question front of mind. After years and decades of gridlock, will the Senate do something about our nation's gun violence epidemic?
That is the question that the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, asked today, but there's a lot of Americans asking, will we do something that matters? With me now to talk about this week on Capitol Hill, and in particular, the issue of gun control and how do we address the violence in our nation, is Mike Johnson. He is a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the Judiciary Committee. He is a constitutional attorney. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Louisiana. He is also a part of the Republican leadership in the House. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, I'm fresh off the plane. 3 flight delays. Didn't have time to change clothes for you yet, but we are back on Capitol Hill, and it's going to be a busy week, as you said.
I feel your pain. I've experienced those travel delays in the last week as I've been traveling. But you're there, and I'm here. So let's talk about what's happening. First, I know a lot of Americans, a lot of conservatives, wondering about this mini-series that kicks off Thursday, the January 6th hearing. What can we expect out of that?
You can expect a Hollywood-style production. That they literally hired one of the former ABC executives who's a producer and has lots of credits to his name. This is pure political theater, Tony, and that proves it. We've been saying this all along. The January 6th committee is illegitimate. It is not bipartisan. They like to say that because they got Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger to go along with this. But they denied the Republican picks for the committee, so they can't say that this was duly compiled or composed. It's Nancy Pelosi's rules. It's Nancy Pelosi's show. And the entire thing is leading up to the election cycle. They want to discredit Donald Trump and as many Republicans on Capitol Hill that they can. That's what you can expect. It'll be a Hollywood-style production. And I hope that most people don't tune into this.
Well, my prediction is that it backfires on them, because I think what it's only going to do is further show the American people the heavy hand in which the Democrats want to run Washington, D.C., and remind them why last November, or the November in 2020, was a mistake in terms of who they put in power, and give them a chance to correct it this November. Let's move on to the issue this week, gun control legislation. The House Rules Committee is scheduled to take up 2 pieces of gun legislation today in response to the shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde. Can you tell us about these 2 particular pieces of legislation?
Yes, this is the product of a grueling 10-hour House Judiciary Committee hearing that was hastily called on Thursday of last week. We had to sit through that. The bills that they were presenting for us to debate and mark up in a regular committee process, really it was a completely irregular thing. Jerry Nadler, of course, is the chairman of the House Judiciary, the Democrat majority lead of our committee. He only had 2 co-sponsors on his bill, and the reason why is because it was hastily compiled. They went to the shelf and pulled off all the dusty old Democrat gun control bills that they could and mashed them up together in one highly emotional, sort of knee-jerk reaction to what happened, the terrible tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. And they presented that because they want to show that they're, quote, doing something. The problem is the provisions of the bill not only would not do anything to solve any of these problems, but almost everything they put on paper was unconstitutional, and some of it had already been declared as such. So this is purely for messaging, just like the January 6th theatrics. They're trying to distract the American people from the real issues that they're deeply concerned about. Now, everybody is concerned about tragedies and school shootings, but our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Tony, the bottom line is they refuse to address the root problems of all this. They want to do gun control, and that is not what is going to solve.
You know, we every time there's a shooting, this is the same thing. We're talking about restricting the guns or whatever is in the hand of the perpetrator, but not addressing what has been put in the heart. And we look at, I don't think we can escape the fact these shootings are taking place in schools. The very same classrooms we kicked God, prayer, 10 Commandments, the Bible out of these classrooms, and we expect our kids to have a sense of morality. I think it's time that we come right back at these Democratic leftist who were demanding that we curb and restrain and take away the freedoms of law-abiding citizens and say, all right, it's time we invite God back into our country again.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is the inevitable result of this decades-long effort to remove God, to remove moral absolutes, to remove even the idea of truth. I mean, you and I know, we talk about all the time, what children in most public schools are being taught now is to find their own truth. I mean, it's moral relativism on steroids now. We can't define anything that's right and wrong. There's certainly no recognition of the sanctity of human life anymore. And so these are the inevitable results of that. On top of that, of course, we had the shutdowns over COVID. We sent young boys and girls alone and isolated them. The shooter in Uvalde was said to have been playing violent video games and was completely isolated. We have a mental health crisis in this country. We have schools that aren't hardened against all of these assaults. But the root problem is, Tony, is what you're getting at, is it's a spiritual problem. After the Sandy Hook shooting, the late Billy Graham put out a commentary on it, and he said, listen, these are spiritual problems and they require spiritual solutions. At the end of the day, that's the only thing that is really going to solve the evil in the human heart.
Well, I think we demand that we have those conversations and we not talk about symptoms. And I want to go to their issue. They're clamoring for gun control, restricting the ability of those between 18 and 21. They have a problem. It's called the Constitution. Right. How are they going to get around the Constitution?
Well, again, this package of legislation is purely for messaging, so I'm not sure they're overly concerned about that, but they can't get around it. I mean, we pointed out in the House Judiciary Committee hearing multiple times that one of the most liberal courts in America, the most liberal federal appellate court, is the Ninth Circuit out California on the West Coast. And it's that court that determined that raising the age to 21 is an unconstitutional. It's a violation of the Second Amendment on its face. They said it's a minimal and meaningless restriction that doesn't pass constitutional muster. So I think that they recognize that what they're doing is not possible. But again, this is for optics, like everything that the Democrats in Washington do right now. They just want to try to show that they're doing something, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. If they wanted to amend the Constitution, they need to present that language, but they're not going to do that, Don.
Well, that's to the point, and we're almost out of time here. But if they were really serious about what they're proposing and not just messaging and posturing for elections, they would put forth a constitutional amendment to address what they're trying to do unconstitutionally.
Well, that's exactly right. But they have no regard for the Constitution. And in the hearing itself, my colleague David Cicilline is one of the Democrat leads on the bill. I mean, he famously said, he used profanity, but he said, I don't want to hear any bull about the Constitution. This is not the time to talk about constitutional rights. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. This is a political agenda. They're trying to gin people up for the election, and there's really not much more to it than that.
Well, we're grateful that we have members like you fighting for the Constitution and fighting for faith, family, and freedom on Capitol Hill. And nice hat. I like the hat. So.
Thanks, Tony. Good to see you.
All right, Mike, good to see you. Take care. Look, if they want to do this, let them put forward a constitutional amendment, if that's what they want to do. But again, I think this is all posturing. It's all political messaging.